September 18, 2003. Hurricane Isabel hit the North Carolina coast as a Category 2 hurricane. It devastated towns along the coast, but that was just the beginning. Let's take you back. If the name Isabel sounds familiar, it's because we already have dealt with a storm called Isabel. It was Tropical Storm Isabel. It threatened the East Coast back in 1985. You may not know this, but hurricane and tropical storm names are actually reused every 6 years. There are 6 different lists, and so every 6 years we see the same names. That is, unless a storm like Andrew does significant damage or kills a significant number of people. And if that happens with Isabel, we will never hear the name Isabel and tropical storm or hurricane again. I'm Triple Doppler meteorologist Patrick Rocky, and that is your Hurricane 411.
At 11 o'clock today, a hurricane watch was issued for the entire North Carolina coast. I've declared a state of emergency for North Carolina. If Hurricane Isabel continues on the current path, we're expecting hurricane force winds will begin Wednesday night and Thursday morning.
Isabel became the 9th named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season on September 6, 2003. Intensifying rapidly, Isabel was a Category 5 by September 11th. Folks along the coast boarded their homes and watched the waves as Isabel made its way toward the coast.
When you lose power or something like that, at least you're prepared. You can run around. Full tank of gas is always better.
The evacuation was supposed to take place at noon today, but since the storm's not supposed to hit until Thursday, we could stay tomorrow and kind of play it by ear and see what happens then.
We encourage everyone to leave, and we're asking our visitors to leave.
We're right here and stay here.
Your prediction?
Well, we think it's going to hit, but I don't think it's going to be that strong.
As the storm weakened, it made landfall as a Category 2 at Drum Inlet, just south of Cape Hatteras on the North Carolina coast.
1 minute stations, 1 minute, 1.
Isabel pushed storm surges of 6 to 8 feet across the Outer Banks, leveling houses, destroying piers, and flooding highways.
Be extra careful.
We've got to be prudent. We cannot afford to have these very expensive, valuable national assets caught in port in a storm like this.
As Isabel moved up the coast with Hampton Roads in its sight, some evacuated while others chose to stay.
This sign at the city's municipal center said it all. Go home, Isabel. The storm had city leaders heading to hurricane meetings throughout the day where they were stressing the importance of those mandatory evacuations.
We've had a lot of questions on that, and it means just what it says. We recommend and we are ordering people to evacuate. Now, that does not mean that we're going to force anyone to leave that does not choose to leave.
And for those who don't leave, the police chief made it clear.
And we will ask those citizens that live in those areas, if they choose to stay, that when they're contacted by a police officer, that they be prepared to provide us with the name and address of next of kin so that we can contact them. And we also ask them to use a permanent magic marker and to write their own name on their forearm so that we can identify them.
The
driving rain keeps coming and going in the Hilton Village section of Newport News. Whereas we've driven around, we've seen a load of downed trees, as you'll see in a lot of neighborhoods across the area. This is probably one of the worst that we've encountered so far, completely blocking a road throughout the area. Though you'll find larger limbs that are on people's lawns, in one case resting on someone's roof, and of course in the streets. And what this is doing right now is causing a problem for the gutter system. That's why as you drive down Warwick Boulevard, you'll find a load of water on the side of the road there at the curb. You also notice those benches we're used to seeing along Warwick as you come up on Main Street have just been toppled over under the force of the wind. A lot of people choosing to stay inside. The best idea, the best place to be right now. In the Hilton Village section of Newport News, Brian Farrell, News Channel 3.
As sand started to swirl and buildings at the Virginia Beach oceanfront began to come apart, businesses were boarded up and folks tried to keep good spirits.
Without a doubt, some of the worst conditions we've seen on the peninsula all day have been in Newport News' East End. We're right on the water where you can see it just pouring in here and filling up what would be an empty field of grass. We're at the Towers high-rise apartment building, which has temporarily been condemned, and here is the reason why. Earlier today, the winds were so strong that they ripped off part of an apartment on the 4th floor of the building. As a precaution, the city evacuated those who were left inside and has condemned it temporarily until inspectors to get back in there to see if there is any structural damage. In the East End of Newport News, Brian Farrell, News Channel 3.
Stacey Davis, we're in York County right now. This is a main artery to the Middle Peninsula, and you can see trees down and branches down all over 17. Water coming up over the roadway in many areas, but folks still out and still traversing these roadways if they can. Now again, we did see a lot of utility trucks out here trying to clear away some of this debris, all that they can. But again, we're in York County, ready the roads, impassable, but as you can see, still folks trying to get around. York County, Stacey Davis, News Channel 3.
The Virginia coast saw storm surges up to 6 feet as the oceanfront boardwalk vanished under the waves. A federal disaster was declared in 36 North Carolina counties, with the economic loss totaling an estimated $5 billion. Isabel Inlet, as it came to be known, stranded people on Hatteras Island for weeks. It wasn't until November of that year when the island was open to the public again.
This is the Kill Devil Hill section of the Outer Banks. You can look over my shoulder here and see the beach is returning back to normal. The waves have receded. The beach is back to its 100-yard plus span here in front of the Holiday Inn and the Ramada Inn. You know the other problems we're encountering on the beach, this is debris that has been knocked down by the waves, churned around in the ocean, and then redeposited on the beach. It is the same type of debris that has also been spit onto the roadways. And just a few minutes ago, I went down and I picked up this piece of lumber right off the beach here. This is part of somebody's decking or some type of a housing material. Obviously a problem to itself. You flip it over and here are the nails in it. There are a lot of nails in this debris. So every time you see a piece of debris, you've got to assume there's something sharp in it. This is not only a hazard to people walking on the beach, but most specifically driving on the roads that have not yet been cleared. So Dare County folks are saying if you've got to get out, use caution. You're not going to Hatteras Island right now, but people in this area, they've got to get out, got to look out for this debris because it could be dangerous not only to yourself but to your vehicle. We're reporting from Kill Devil Hills. Mike Mather, News Channel 3.
Left in the dark, more than 700,000 homes and businesses lost power in North Carolina. Dare County saw the biggest impact as storm surge flooding and strong winds damaged thousands of homes.
I know everybody wants to know, when will my lights come on? Dominion's plan is mission critical businesses first, sewage pumping stations, water plants, that type of thing.
We have just gone through probably the worst storm in at least a generation in Isabel.
I think the wind started coming in there and it was weakening it. You can see how we'll probably lose $7,000, $8,000 a day, you know, just being shut down.
What was the lay of the land for the house before?
I see some neighbor stuff in here, but the biggest share of this is my stuff.
As trees toppled over onto power lines, homes, and cars, neighbors looked out for each other and lent a helping hand wherever they could.
Now that's gotta be the worst.
Yeah. Nothing more.
That was it. But if it does show up on TV, what time will y'all be?
Well, we're gonna get to this. Is the story.
From the looks of it, you might not believe anyone could have survived in this car, crushed by a tree as it fell under the force of Isabel's winds. About 12:30 p.m., Stuart Montgomery saw a tree leaning heavily in the backyard of his home on Magruder Drive off South Independence Boulevard. He called his neighbor, Bernie Stein, to warn him about the two cars parked in the driveway between their homes, right in line where it looked like the trees might fall.
About 10 minutes later, I looked out the back and I got a back porch I could watch it, and I watched the tree fall. I said, oh my God, I wonder if Bernie's still in the car. And so I came out, and he had already removed one car, and he was in the other one. I went over, he talked to me, and he said he was all right.
I think the thing that saved his life was the seat and the compression. The force is a compression force on the seat that you can see right there, and that held up. And you can see inside there was a little compartment, and that's where his It was the property is replaceable. This vehicle will be replaced. Unfortunately, serious injuries we can't, and it's just not worth it.
In Virginia Beach, Tom Coben, News Channel 3.
Stacey Davis here in Newport News. We're on Route 60, Warwick Boulevard, which is the main thoroughfare up to the Denby section. Here, we've got some good Samaritans here that are actually helping clear this road. This is a huge tree that has fallen once again in front of one of the major thoroughfares here in Newport News, and they are helping to cut it down. They got a big job there, though. Look at that thickness of that tree. These are old trees with the saturated ground just simply tipped over in these high winds that we got up here on the peninsula. Again, the police standing by to help keep the lights on these folks. But these are just good Samaritans who are here trying to help out and clean the peninsula up from Isabel's wrath. Reporting in Newport News, Stacey Davis, News Channel 3.
It's a sound and a sight people in this Yorktown neighborhood have waited for a long time.
Honestly, you want to stop and hug each one of them and say, oh, you're here. It's a good feeling.
Crews with Dominion Virginia Power are prepared to install a new transformer on Terrebonne Road Thursday evening to replace one destroyed by Hurricane Isabel. The storm roared through here 2 weeks ago. Ellen Rhodes and her neighbors haven't had power since.
Dominion Virginia crews say the folks in this area still need to use alternative methods for electricity in their homes because the power lines here on the peninsula sustained some of the worst damage during Hurricane Isabel.
How I understood it, since we're just on a street all by ourselves, that, with the priorities, that we kind of were at the bottom.
Because of the inconvenience, Sharon Sylvie, her children, and their dad spent nights with other relatives. But that all changed that Thursday evening.
We can turn some lights on.
Power was finally restored on Terrebonne Road at about 7, so the people here can start getting back to normal.
We're all excited. We're excited. The kids will have warm baths, and we can get food in the refrigerator again, and it'll be good.
During the height of the storm, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel recorded wind gusts of 87 miles per hour. Harrison's fishing pier, the original Ocean View fishing pier, was destroyed by the hurricane's waves and wind. Arguably, this is the most iconic image from Isabel. VDOT crews were unable to close the floodgates at the Midtown Tunnel between Norfolk and Portsmouth. The storm surge sent 44 million gallons of water pouring into the tube, and it took nearly a month to pump the water out, make the necessary repairs, and get traffic flowing again. A lot has changed in the 2 decades since Isabel. The most obvious, there are now 2 tubes east and westbound at the Midtown Tunnel.
This is the tide gate for the Midtown West Tunnel. When this gate is lowered, no traffic can enter the tunnel. This would protect us, from any type of storm water, rapid rising tides, things like that during, a hurricane.
That's Ryan McLean, who is in charge of operations and maintenance for Elizabeth River Crossings, a private company that built the new tube and now operates both the Midtown and downtown tunnels. ERC not only built a second tunnel, they also raised the approach to the old tunnel by 1.5 feet to make it less prone to flooding. They also added new berms and bulkheads on the Norfolk side to keep water from entering the tunnel. They added a dedicated tidal monitoring station so they know in real time how fast the water is rising, and they regularly practice lowering those floodgates to make sure everything will go smoothly when the weather goes downhill. And while the Midtown Tunnel flood may be the most recognizable image from Hurricane Isabel, the biggest impact for most of us, widespread long-term power outages. In Norfolk alone, Isabel knocked out power to 99.67% of all homes and businesses. Recently, I traveled to Dominion Energy's Storm Center in Richmond to find out how things would be different today. For all the sound and fury that a hurricane brings, preparing for the next storm like Isabel mostly happens on quiet days like this.
So Isabel was a game changer.
That's Shad Hedrick. He heads Dominion's Storm Center. But 20 years ago, he was one of the boots on the ground working to get Hampton Roads power back up.
In 2003, we had 82% of our customers out. And that's huge.
Huge is right. Isabel knocked down hundreds of miles of high voltage lines and broke more than 2,300 utility poles. That's why for many of us, the power was out for weeks. But Hedrick points to 3 big changes since Isabel that would help his team get the lights back on more quickly.
It all starts with a weather forecast. We would be planning days and days ahead.
Dominion has its own team of meteorologists led by Jeff Mock.
Weather forecasting has changed a lot. Models are much better. A 5-day forecast is much better. We're using more machine learning and big data technologies now to compare how this weather is going to translate to outages.
And knowing how many outages to expect helps Dominion plan for bringing in crews from out of state and pre-positioning equipment so that those crews can hit the ground running.
If we do have another Isabel, there will be outages, but the grid hardening that we do today and the strategic undergrounding it sets us up to make those repairs much faster than we would have in 2003.
Those are the other 2 really important things that have changed since Hurricane Isabel: grid hardening and strategic undergrounding. Grid hardening involves things like replacing wooden poles with concrete or steel, cutting back trees, and elevating substations to prevent flooding. Strategic undergrounding is basically burying the most at-risk overhead power lines to keep them from getting damaged.
Removing that type of work from the large number of projects that we have to work on really allows us to focus on the most important.
You just have to look to the Great Neck neighborhood in Virginia Beach. Power for most homes and businesses was restored within hours of April's EF3 tornado because the utility lines were underground.
But Isabel was the catalyst for a lot of the process improvements and technological improvements that are in use today.
We can't always prevent the power from going out, but if we're prepared, we can minimize the duration of those outages. And that's the ultimate goal.